Thank you. Good evening. It is 7 p.m. and this is the District of Sechelt regular council meeting of Wednesday, September 16th. And we are coming to you from the Sechelt Nation lands. We have an amended agenda. Do all of council have the amended agenda? Councillor Lamb? Okay. Do you want to download it? Everyone else has it?
Just for clarification, the amended
Yes.
agenda is adding item 10.4 and also a copy of my SCRD report. And
Yes,
that's it.
that's it. And a little bit of renumbering. That's all. Okay, let me know when you have that downloaded, Councillor Lamb.
I'm working on it.
Okay,
It's just downloading right now on my.
okay. So maybe we'll do is we'll adopt the agenda as amended.
Sure.
Someone like to move that and second it? All in favor? Thank you. There are no appointments and delegations, no proclamations.
However, I do have a conflict to declare.
Yes,
Conflict with item 8.2.
thank you.
Thank you.
So Jen, you'll be ready to move her into the waiting room?
When we get there, I will. Yeah.
Thank you. So let's move on to item 5.1, adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting of September 2nd. And this indicates for receipt only. Is this not for adoption as well?
Thank you, Your Worship. That's a typo. Yes, it should be for adoption. Thank you for noticing that.
Okay. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, just a minor amendment on page 15. So near the bottom, it says the BC Ferries Project Working Group differs slightly from the Ferry Advisory Committee, as it is a 3 full-day working input group, as opposed to bi-weekly meetings. Our meetings are not bi-weekly, they are semi-annually. Big difference there.
Yes. Okay, any other errors or omissions? So I'd like a motion to adopt the minutes as amended. Moved? Seconded? All in favor? Thank you. So let's move on to the minutes of the Advisory Planning Commission meeting of September 1st, and these are for receipt. Any errors or omissions in here? Motion to receive? Moved? Seconded? All in favor? Thank you. So we'll move on to bylaws. First is item 8.1A, rezoning application for 5547 Trail Avenue for City State Consulting. Motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And turn it over to staff. I don't know which staff member is looking to do this one. Is it Sven and we're waiting for him to join in?
It is Sven.
Okay.
Yes, I think
No
we're
problem.
just waiting for connection.
Your Worship, it is Sven, and I do see that he's trying to connect audio. There might be a momentary glitch there.
No problem.
I think he's trying.
So I'm going to assume that he is connected.
Your worship, it looks like, I'm guessing, I think Director Al,
There
there
he
we go.
is.
I think Andrew just went and got him and brought him to his office.
Slight connectivity problems, but I think. Thank you.
No problem. All right, over to you, Sven. And we can't hear you currently.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay,
Not at my usual desk here today. So tonight I can present to you a rezoning application to facilitate a small lot subdivision at 5547 Trail Avenue. This site might be familiar to you. There was a previous rezoning application last year to introduce an option for a laneway house on this property. And the new owner has elected to make an application to facilitate subdivision of the property. This would require an amendment to the existing R2A zone that currently applies only to the subject property. The proposal essentially would maintain the existing single-family home that's on the property right now on the south end of the property, and a new lot would be created on the northern portion, and that would be accessed via Starfish Lane. So the existing zoning is the R2A zone that was introduced to allow laneway homes. And currently further amendments are proposed to facilitate that small lot subdivision. It would be site specific at that time, or at this time, but others in the village infill area could elect to apply to rezone to the R2A zone as well, and a narrow lot subdivision would be facilitated. We wouldn't expect this to be adopted significantly, mainly because most of the homes that are in the area right now are not configured in a way to make them amenable to subdivision, but the end of block lots certainly are a little bit more flexible for subdivision because of their configuration. So the proposed amendments would reduce the minimum parcel size from 700 square meters to 350 square meters. That's what the applicant has initially requested the amendment to be, and staff are recommending a few further amendments to facilitate the small lot subdivision in the R2A zone, and that would consist of restricting two-family dwellings or duplexes to lots over 700 square meters so that they wouldn't be permitted on small lots. We also would restrict laneway houses to only be permitted on lots over 700 square meters. We're looking at an increase to the minimum floor area ratio from 35 to 50%. And this was mainly seen to be a significant hindrance. 35% was quite low. And especially for a small lot configuration would result in unreasonably small homes. So 50% is a level that is supported by the OCP and more consistent with other jurisdictions that have small lot subdivisions. We'd also be looking at a reduction of the minimum lot width to 9 meters, which is about half of what most of the lots in the downtown area are. In this particular proposal, a minimum width reduction actually isn't required. The lot is sufficiently wide enough to comply with the current regulation of 18, but we've decided to put this in so that it would be an option for other property owners in the area. We've also recommended to introduce density bonusing in order to qualify for a small lot subdivision. And this makes it very clear that an amenity contribution is required to access the increased density. And this is in conformance with the Local Government Act that has density bonusing provisions written directly into it for these types of situations. We're providing some comparable jurisdictions. Excuse me. Gibson's, for example, 280 square meter minimum lot size, very similar lot coverage and floor area ratios, as well as heights. Pitt Meadows, Souk, Summerland, these are all communities that are fairly comparable to Sechelt in size and land use patterns. So as far as a comparison for where a laneway house would currently be permitted and what that would look like allowing small lot subdivision, the major difference would be a more significant floor area ratio or home size that could be achieved, although the difference is not very extreme. So I've given some examples here. 127 square meters, including a garage for a laneway house. And that would be 175 square meters on a small lot house. So square footage, 1,300 versus 1,800, so not significantly larger. The floor area ratio would also include the garage space, so slightly bigger building. The other main difference would be an increased height. 6 meters currently for a laneway house versus 8.5 for a small lot house. And that reflects a 1.5 story building generally for a laneway house and a 2-story building for a small lot house. Coverage is essentially the same. Setbacks are effectively the same. We're not proposing any changes to that. A secondary suite in a laneway house is not permitted. However, at this time, we're proposing that a secondary suite be permitted in a small lot house. And the parking provisions are also given as an example there. Just a quick recap of the OCP designations in the village residential infill area. Small lot subdivision is specifically supported by the OCP on properties with rear lane access. And property sizes in the 350 to 600 square meter range are supported. And our current proposal is 350 square meter minimum lot size. Any construction that would take place on a small lot subdivision would be subject to our development permit area 8 as well. And that's the same DPA that would apply for a laneway house construction. It's a fairly broad DPA that deals with infill housing and intensive residential uses, and specifically has a section for small lot subdivision as well. But the intent is basically to integrate any new infill development with the surrounding neighborhood, and to ensure that we have a high standard of urban development where properties are generally in closer proximity, to have a greater control on the design of any proposal that comes forward. So our recommendations tonight are to give first reading to zoning bylaw 25-308, and that we proceed to our consulting and referral stage. Thank you.
All right, councillors, any questions? Councillor Toth?
Thank you. I've got notes here, so I'm just going to refer to my notes. On page 27, shows a diagram with the servicing connections on it. I guess my question is, the servicing connections for the rear lot show us digging up our brand new Trail Avenue. I'm just wondering if there's any ability to access those through the laneway instead. Is there any provisions already in the laneway, or any ability to sort of future-proof by doing something like that?
These connections are just illustrations provided by the applicant. A detailed engineering analysis for servicing would be done at the next phase, where we consult with our engineering department. We can look into that. I did reach out to our engineering department, and likely water connection would be provided through the rear lane. The water main is not back there, but it wouldn't necessarily require digging up of the entire street or anything like that. And similarly with the sewer connection, that's certainly something we'll be looking into. If any alterations are required, then at the applicant's expense, they would have to repair whatever is altered.
And just a note on that, I think until the whole project is done, the top lift of asphalt will not be done. So depending on timing, it may rip up the layer that's there, but could be then repaired with the top lift. Councillor McLean?
Yes, similar question about servicing. Would they be required to pave the back lane? I noticed that just the section in front of this property is in pretty rough condition currently.
They would be required to pave their frontage along the lane, yes.
Okay, that would be a huge improvement for everyone on the lane, so.
Okay, I have a question. You indicated that if somebody wanted to put a duplex in, they would need a 700 square meters?
Square meters.
Square meter lot, but you're saying in this case, a suite would be allowed. So what's the difference between a duplex or having a primary with a suite?
So suites currently in our bylaw are restricted in size. They have to be less than the main single family dwelling. A 2-family dwelling wouldn't have any restriction. It would be a full usage of the building as a principal use of each side. So you'd likely see a strata unit or something like that. Generally, the intensity of land use, residential land use, would be higher on a duplex than it would be with a single family home with just a suite in it. But as far as size goes, the secondary suite is currently restricted to 90 square meters, I think. There would be no such restriction for a 2-family dwelling.
So they still would need parking for that suite if they chose to do a suite, correct?
That's right. 1 extra spot.
Okay.
A duplex would require 2 full spots, so a total of 4 on a duplex.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Councillor Toth?
I will move recommendation 2, that council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw 25-308 2020. And recommendation 3, that staff refer the application and zoning amendment bylaw 25-308 2020 and consult relevant stakeholders and agencies, including A, Advisory Planning Commission, B, Seashell Village Residents Association, C, Seashell Fire Department, D, School District 46, and E, Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Lots of them. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. So we'll move to the zoning bylaw. Item 8.1B. This is on page 42. This is District of Seashell bylaw number 25-308 2020 for city state, being a bylaw to amend District of Seashell zoning bylaw number 25-1987. Would someone like to move first reading? Moved. Seconded. All in favor? Thank you. So we're moving on to item 8.2, and Councillor Rowe is going to be recusing herself. And she's gone, just like that. So first, motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And this is with regards to Trellis rezoning application, Silverstone Long-Term Care Home OCP amendment, bylaw number 492-26 2020, and zoning amendment bylaw number 25-303 2020. And we'll turn it over to staff.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So the Trellis rezoning application is presented here for third reading. The public hearing has been completed. We have the public hearing summary report and all the written submissions attached to your package. There's also the third reading condition that had been instituted for the detailed landscape plan. Staff are comfortable that that has been met. The applicant provided a landscape plan a few weeks ago. Staff reviewed it, provided comments. They revised the plan. The revised plan is what's attached to your package now. It's sufficient to satisfy the third reading condition. Staff will be reviewing it a little bit more and working with the applicant to refine it further prior to adoption. But otherwise, both the OCP and the zoning amendment bylaws are ready to be considered for third reading. If third reading is given, then we'd have to send the zoning bylaw out to the Ministry of Transportation for their approval. There's also work that needs to be done on the district side for the covenants associated with the rezoning conditions, preparation of those documents. So there's still some work to be done, but everything's ready for third reading.
All right, any questions by council? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just need a page number here, so give me a second. I was hoping, oh, there it is. Okay. Page, it is not loading. 177. There's a site plan. So once you have that loaded up, what I believe in the bottom right-hand corner of that is a bus pullout. How does the bus get over there? Because essentially it comes up Cowrie, turns left onto Derby currently. This would require it turning right onto Derby, turning around, and then pulling into that bus stop. So does staff have any clarity on why that bus stop is located in that location?
This was, in response to referral comments from the SCRD, and staff had raised this too about looking at future provision for public transit in this area. So at least at this time, incorporating the potential for the bus pullout into the site design, so it doesn't have to be retrofitted in future, that it's already been incorporated now. And that with the expectation that eventually there would be a routing of the transit bus so that it could make use of that stop. I'm not sure if that stop would go into use right away, but we're wanting to deal with the incorporation of it into the actual site design now, so that in future the transit system can make use of it.
Councillor McLean?
Yeah, so when I brought up this point right at the beginning, my intention was to have a bus stop right out front from day one. The bus goes right by there, and just trying to make the space so it can stop at that corner rather than eventual planning. So that kind of leads me. So that leads to a question: can a bus turn around in the parking lot, perhaps, and maybe park on this middle island that they have there? And furthermore, the entrance to the site seems slightly unsafe to me. I believe the best practice for intersections is to have everything nicely aligned. But what we have here, you can't really see it on this drawing, is the entrance offset by some 50 feet, I can't tell on the scale, but it's not aligned. So is there any way we could move the west entrance to be in line with Cowie, so then you can go straight from Cowie into the Trellis site?
I think the primary entrance is meant to be the second entrance. And then people are coming out of the westernmost entrance as you're looking at the site plan. I guess the previous discussions with the applicant had looked at possibly either accessing off of Derby directly or potentially extending Cowie Street, a stub of Cowie Street north of Derby, and then having them access off of there along the west side. The applicant has wanted to pursue the Derby access, sort of as shown. Now, again, this is still at the conceptual and landscape planning side. Now, they've proven out their dimensions, but once we get into the actual subdivision, they'd certainly have to do more work to make sure everything functions properly. But I'm assuming that they've done enough work to be satisfied that it proves out good enough access for their purposes.
Yeah, I think just that little stub of Cowie being extended would provide a much safer intersection, and then access through the site can essentially go through what is labeled fire truck parking, and one of those entrances can be closed, so we don't have an entrance right near an intersection of what could be potentially a very busy road in 20 years.
Yeah. I think part of the issue too is with the landowner, like the Saguenay Lumber, and their sort of future rezoning plans and how the road network works for them. I mean, we don't have a detailed local road network plan for this area. I mean, there's some broad strokes around Derby, extensions of other major roads, but there's some flexibility around those internal roads depending on what happens with residential development to the west of the site, how that all gets planned out, if it's going to be strata or non-strata, what public roads are going through there. So, I mean, at the moment, again, yeah, the applicant is focused on the Derby Road access as the only access.
That has to do with how much land they actually have for their proposal. I understand where Councillor McLean's coming, but that would actually be something that would have to be not on their property.
Yeah, it would require taking road dedication from the landowner separate from the land that would be owned eventually by Trellis.
Okay.
Is that something that's possible at this stage?
I suppose it's something that could be looked at again through the subdivision application. If there was a need to reconsider access to the site, but I guess at the moment, the rezoning is based on, their proposed site plan and ultimately the proposed uses, less so the access. They've kind of proven out access from Derby Road. That's been satisfactory so far. And staff had worked with them to look at the potential extension of Cowrie, but decided against that.
Okay, any other questions from council? Councillor Toth.
Not so much a question. I wrote a few comments here. It's a little bit of soapboxing. My apologies. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I've had comments up to the point of the public hearing. I am opposed to private primary care. I'm opposed to the replacement of public funded models with private for-profit operations. However, the community's debated the merits of public versus private for a long time now, and would continue to do so until both Shorncliffe and Totem were nothing but rotten piles of lumber on the ground. The province has been quite adamant that it's not going to rip up the contract and has managed to do the best it can for both workers and residents of a new facility. Ultimately, these are the cards that we've been dealt, and the municipality has no jurisdiction in the private versus public debate. We only look at land use and zoning and OCP. And on that front, I'm perfectly fine to move recommendations 2, 3, and 4 as presented.
Is there a seconder for that moving them? Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. So let's move to item 8.2B, which would be the District of Sechelt bylaw number 492-26, 2020, being a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt official community plan bylaw number 492-2010. And I look for someone to move third reading. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And we'll move to item 8.2C on page 181. This is District of Sechelt bylaw number 25-303, 2020, Silverstone, being a bylaw to amend District of Sechelt zoning bylaw number 25, 1987. Someone to move third reading. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. So next we move on to item 8.3A. This is building amendment bylaw number 409-6, 2020. Yes.
Just one moment, we're just bringing Councillor Rowe back into the meeting.
Oh, thank you. We'll leave her out there forever. Dave's laughing at me.
You think she heard that?
I don't know. Brenda, I forgot about you. We're going to leave you out there forever. Welcome back.
Thank you. You haven't aged a day.
It's good because it's only been about 15 minutes. All right, we're on to item 8.3A on page 186. 186. This is building amendment bylaw number 409-6, 2020. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Allen, I believe this is you.
Yes, thank you. Quite simple. This was received and readings were granted at previous council meeting and placed back on the agenda for adoption, a minor amendment to the building bylaw 409 to allow for a hard cover pool with water removal device as an alternate to fencing. And staff are recommending adoption of this bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Council? There's a recommendation. Would someone like to move recommendation 2? Councillor McLean?
Yeah, I'll move recommendation 2 that council, having considered the nope, that's the wrong one. Somebody's gonna have to pull up the right bylaw for me.
Page 186, Councillor Scott.
I'll move recommendation 2 that council proceed with adoption of the building bylaw and building amendment bylaw 409-6, 2020.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Move on to the actual bylaw, item 8.3B, District of Sechelt bylaw number 409-6, 2020, a bylaw to amend building bylaw number 409, 2003, and who would like to move adoption? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you very much. No new business. We'll move on to item 10, business items, 10.1. This is transition to liquor primary license at 5591 Wharf Avenue, Sechelt Legion. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you, and it looks like it's Sven again because he popped back up.
I did, thank you. I don't have a PowerPoint for you tonight. This is a fairly self-explanatory report, so I'm happy to answer any questions. But in summary, the Legion has applied for a change in liquor license to go from a club designation to a liquor primary license. This is the same liquor primary license that would be applied for by any other liquor establishment that is open to the public. And happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Just a quick one. I wanted to say thank you to the Legion. I saw that they had responded to the one negative feedback that we received to address some misconceptions that were in there. My question is, how does it work when the Legion wants to move to a new location? We know that they're looking at renovating a location. Does the neighborhood need to be consulted again when they look at moving their liquor license into this new location?
Yes, changes of location for liquor license do require a new process that's mandated by the Liquor Control Board.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Scott?
Are we seeing this, like, has the Legion talked about whether this is a trend going across the country? License?
Sorry, you broke up there for a bit. You had a little bit of a.
I'm just curious if this is a trend, if this is the direction that the Legion's going all around, or if it's just specifically this branch. Like, are the Gibsons and Roberts Creek Legions looking to do the same thing?
That's something that the applicant could probably speak to better than I could. I believe they are on the gallery tonight and able to answer that question.
Okay. Do we want to bring Larry in? He's got his, here, I'm just going to say allowed to talk. Okay. Go ahead, Larry.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
This is a trend right across Canada with Legions, because Legions are kind of a dying brand because there's not a lot of veterans out there any longer. And for us to exist, we need to change to a liquor primary. And there are many Legions in the province of BC that I'm aware of that have already switched from a club license to a primary license.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? All right, there is a recommendation. Councillor Rowe.
We'll move recommendation 2 that council, having considered the location, person capacity, and hours of liquor service, supports the application to the BC Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for a transition from liquor primary club license to liquor primary license for the Royal Canadian Legion branch number 140, located at 5591 Wharf Avenue, Sechelt.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. Moving on to page 196. This is item 10.2, Grand Excelsior Investments and Applin and Martin Development Master Plan. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And Mr. Allen, you look like you're speaking to this. You unmuted.
Yes, thank you. This is an introduction of a development application we received, really long-term yet large project. So we brought this forward for a very preliminary permission to proceed to council's perspective and authorization to move forward. So at this point, it's not a decision point on approving a development of an introduction. So I will show you a few slides, walk you through some of the key points, and then turn it over for discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, so this series of properties is four properties. It's, here is Wakefield Road. So it's west of Wakefield Road, Northwest Bay Road. District Lot 2338, which is this large block, and a couple of side pieces which are hooked across Acorn Road. Council may recall the Bounty, the rezoning from 2019 is in the vicinity. A district lot at Edwards Road, a larger district lot here. There is a connection down on Leanne Road and then you've got a road over here and another larger district lot. So it comprises of four parcels. We will commonly call this the subject parcel. It's it shows as 28.7 hectares, which is around 320 acres of total land. So it's quite a chunk of land. There's been development applications on this parcel in the past. Several years ago, it was once called the Trails subdivision. It was a rezoning. There was not a subsequent subdivision, but nonetheless, it's been in the community realm for some time. The present owner has been working on their own plan for the past year or two, and we've met with them several times. We've been out on site. So much of the properties within the secondary growth and the urban containment boundary noted within the official community plan, with the exception of the westernmost district lot, and this is fairly steep up the hillside, and you can see creeks on it. This particular parcel is outside of the containment boundary, and it's been noted as being a resource designation in the official community plan. So here shows the zoning, the CD 27 zoning. This was a result of earlier rezoning applications as a R1 zoning and RR1. So R1 being residential, RR being rural or resource, and CD, of course, comprehensive development. Then we also have mixed multifamily official community plan designations, residential and resource. So there's a mixture, there's a grouping of different development potentials on these properties. Same map, but slightly different text. So the proposal here is to rethink this, create a new official community plan designation for the properties, a new comprehensive development zone with subzones, areas on the easternmost portion, if approved in long term, would have a higher density than parcels over here in the west. But nonetheless, the applicants propose to look at this as a whole and propose some new. So there's been a fair amount of studies involved. There's been market studies, economic analysis, geotechnical, environmental. They've done some civil engineering, design layout to see how this could work. It does require extension of services, water, sewer, so forth, and new access points on the western end. They have taken into consideration a number of policies within the official community plan, respecting park dedication, respecting green space preservation, both of which tie into conservation design. So the conservation design is a policy that it was born out of the Seashell Vision Plan, the 2005-6 era, and it's now in our OCP. It's about development, working with the land, clustering settlement nodes, trying to find the flatter areas, preserving views, nice trees. There's really beautiful rocky bluffs in this area and so forth. We're really working around the nature rather than just flattening the site. So there has been a fair amount of work put involved. They've had some key studies, key reports, which staff have reviewed. And should we move forward on this, would form a part of the development review and the proposal. And this shows a sense of that. So I'll stress that this is the proposal. We've given it just a very preliminary review, phase development, 10 to 20 year timeline. It could potentially garner 850 residential units. I'll caution council that that's not to say there's 850 units being proposed this year or next. It is a long-term build out. These over here would be pods of residential and multifamily parks, some neighborhood commercial, the primary street through the site, various different types of densities. This one here being the property which is presently zoned resource. This one actually reminds me a lot of some of the subdivisions you see in Harbor that snake up the hill, viewpoints, maybe more of a rural type setting than say something over here, a little bit more potential neighborhood center. And there is a first phase. So the phases at this point, again, being early and subject to market conditions and subject to council approval, of course. The first phase is proposed to start over on the east side, and it would be up to approximately 59 single family units. But the proposal is to start with a phase, yet look at the zoning and OCP and amenity contribution on site and to the community throughout, and start with that and give it a real wholesome review to see what's possible on this property. So what proposing next steps would be to continue to analyze the proposed land uses and density, determine what's appropriate, dive a little deeper into our OCP and really think about some of the areas of development, restricted development, really highlight the areas of land that should be preserved in perpetuity, vegetation such as the tree here. It's, there are some really mature trees and native vegetation and rock bluffs and so forth that really deserve attention and respect. Focus in on the development phasing, development agreements, community amenity contributions, and as well as community engagement. We know that people will be concerned about access to the site, development of the site. So we want to, both us, staff and council, as well as the applicants, talk to the community, the neighbors, so forth. There'll be a lot of work to be done respecting surfacing, looking at our own engineering standards, possible alternate road standards, identifying water supply availability, and the phasing in of that, pressure zones, storage, and on site. Certainly a lot of discussion to be had with the Ministry of Transportation, Sechelt Nation, and so forth. Given it is a big project, and you'll note in the staff report, you should, you'll note that we're looking for some assistance on this, possibly bringing in some consultants' assistance to help us carry some of the heavy load on this project. And that will be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, questions? Councilor McLean and Councilor Scott.
Okay, so I have a long list of questions that I don't expect answers to right now, but I do want to throw them out there so planning staff can hear, council can hear, and the applicant can hear. So just going to go through them, and reminder that I'm not looking for answers right now. First up, how will West Sechelt Elementary handle the extra students? Will bus service be provided through the neighborhood? Will the connection to the highway be built before phase 1 is built? Why is the road connectivity so low? This could be considered a master planned community. So I've pondered, what does a complete residential community need? And the brief list I came up with is trails, playgrounds, tennis or basketball courts, a community hall, a school, daycare, restaurant, and convenience stores. To that end, why are there 3 commercial areas identified, or why not 1? how much commercial and office space can a site outside of downtown really handle? Will there be some rental housing to provide a true mix of housing types within the development? And finally, is it the right time to develop the West Side single family area? So that's my list. I'll send a copy to planning staff so they have it in writing.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Toth.
Sorry, Councillor Scott had his hand up before me.
Sorry, yeah, and I actually called on him. Yes, Councillor Scott.
Well, that's okay. I mean, is there any other questions to be had after? I had similar questions, and one being the school. Definitely needs to be part of that. You have 850 homes in there. Wesley Schelt Elementary isn't anywhere near big enough, and so there needs to be some thoughts on that for sure. But Councillor McLean had lots of great points in there that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Toth.
Yeah, 2 points I'd like to add on to Councillor McLean's list of issues or questions. There are several locations in the sort of master plan that are labeled private park. I guess the question is, would those be private as in strata managed or private as in not accessible to non-residents? And then the other big one was in the BC Government Highway 101 corridor review. One of the things that was suggested was to close the intersection at Hill Road and relocate the entrance to that neighborhood over to an extension of Dale to the west. I think that'd be a very prudent thing for this development to consider tying into, and perhaps we can get the development to pay for that as part of some amenities, which would also allow for the installation of a traffic signal at that location in the future if it becomes necessary. Those are sort of the things that I had that Councillor McLean didn't already touch on. I would like to see the applicant make early presentation to the West Sechelt Community Association, just to solicit early concept feedback, things that we may not think of sitting at this table.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Okay, looking at the phasing, the question I have is, as Councillor McLean mentioned, access. I mean, if we're looking at developing on the east side first, then given there's no access to the highway over there, we would actually be accessing via Norwest Bay and or Wakefield. And that's a fairly narrow road. How would that be managed? Is that sufficient? Or would there need to be some upgrading to that, given the amount of traffic that's coming through? So we're gonna have to look at traffic counts and things, not just for the development, but for the phasing and how the traffic infrastructure can actually support that. And then Councillor McLean actually talked to me today about the school piece. And one of the things that I know happens in other communities is when you have a master development like this, sometimes they actually contribute a site for a school, and or depending on the size of the development, sometimes they actually build a school. I don't know where those numbers are, so how big a development would need to be to actually financially contribute that sort of amenity to a community. But I think it's prudent to get the school district involved early, and so we can look at how that would actually play out. You know, as we know, West Sechelt Elementary School right now is expanding. Sorry, I've got an awful feedback. Anyway, West Sechelt Elementary is expanding right now, so we know that they're not going to be expanding that school anytime in the near future. They don't have the land to do that either there. So given the size of this development coming in, that's something that we need to plan for ahead of time. So early, involvement with them would be prudent. Yeah, Director Allen?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to comment on that. I did briefly run through some of the referral agencies we would consult with. We would absolutely consult with School Board or School District 46. The Local Government Act is very clear about early and ongoing consultation during the development and amendment of official community plans. Presently, the radius for catching a bus to Chatleach is 3.2 kilometers. The eastern part of this property is just about that. So all of this would be full bus zone for Chatleach. Another funny little quirk at the moment, District Lot 1731, which is the R1 zone property on Edwards Road, is in the West Sechelt Elementary catchment area. The other 3 properties are actually in the Kinnickinnick catchment area. So that's something we would have to raise with the school district and revisit that and see how that might work in the future.
Right, okay. Council, anything else? Councillor Scott. And then we'll go to Councillor Kuster.
You'd mentioned about communities like this building the school, and where we lived in Abbotsford before we moved here, it was a community just like that. And they built the school, built a pavilion, store access. And when we lived there, there was about 300 homes and a plan to go to about 600 homes.
Okay, Councillor Kuster.
Yeah, Matt actually asked a lot of the questions I was thinking about. But Andrew, how long do you see this like phasing? Like, how long of a project would something like this be to completion? Just like, no, just a ballpark. Just what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, their information we received from the applicant, 15 to 20 years is potential full build out, right? And there's a lot of work to do here. There's a lot of infrastructure to extend and bring in. There's market rate absorptions is not the only development site in Sechelt, a whole host of factors. So they've stressed that there's a lot of planning, a lot of decisions to be made, both from council and the landowners themselves. And a lot of pieces of the puzzle that need to be fit in place here yet. And so this is not an overnight by any means, but it's an introduction of it. So let's say long-term, yeah.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, so that brings me up to my other point that I had prepared. According to the census, Sechelt has about 1.9 residents per household. So that means this development could add about 1,600 residents to Sechelt's population. If the build out is at 20 years at a 2% growth rate, this development will account for 30% of our growth in Sechelt. However, if the build out is in 10 years, this development accounts for 67% of all of our planned growth in Sechelt. So right now, I don't think this property is deserving of 67% of Sechelt's growth. There are many other locations that are better suited for development before this one. However, that's not the decision we're making today. Does this site have potential to be better than what it has been proposed? Yes. And that's why I'll support our staff doing the planning work, exploring this idea further, so we can make this site worthy of creating the majority of our growth in the next few years.
So are you making the recommendation on page 196?
Yes, so I'll make recommendation 2 that council direct staff to proceed with reviewing the proposal and developing bylaw amendments associated with the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment application.
And is there a seconder for that? Seconded. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. We're going to move to item, sorry,
Before we move on,
go ahead.
sorry.
Mhm.
I would actually like to move an additional recommendation, recognizing that this is early. I'd like to move that the applicant be encouraged to make presentation to the West Sechelt Community Association to solicit early concept feedback to help ensure compatibility and connectivity, given the proximity of this development to the neighborhood.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded. Any comments or questions? Okay, I think they've already been in touch with the West Sechelt Community Association for some very preliminary conversations, but totally in support of what you're putting forward. All those in favor? Thank you. Any further motions? All right, let's move on to item 10.3. 10.3 is a license to occupy for Pebbles Restaurant on-street patio pilot program. Motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And over to the corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to consider approval of a license to occupy agreement with 5454 Trail Nominee Ltd, doing business as Pebbles Restaurant. The license to occupy would authorize the placement of a temporary patio structure on District of Sechelt right-of-way along the Trail Bay Boulevard on the south side of the restaurant, facing the boulevard. As council will recall, a resolution was passed earlier in May, actually, authorizing staff to go out and develop a street patio pilot project, working with the Sechelt Downtown Business Association and other businesses. This is the second one to come forward. Owners of Pebbles Restaurant approached the district with an interest in expanding outdoors to allow for outdoor dining. Staff has worked with the owners, and based on the discussions, the several meetings and discussions that staff have had with the owners, we've developed the attached license to occupy agreement for your consideration of approval. Page 229 is the Appendix 1 to the agreement, and that shows you where the exact location and dimensions are, or would be, the area they would be using on District of Sechelt right-of-way. And page 230 is the second attachment to the license. It forms part of the license, and it sets out the specifications and guidelines that the owners would be expected to follow, and that, again, is based on the discussions that staff have had with the owners. At this point, the owners haven't finalized all the arrangements, but we thought it was important to get this in front of council so that we're not holding things up at our end, and so it's on the books that it's been approved as the owners continue to finalize their plans. That's my report. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. Thank you.
Council, questions? Councillor McLean?
What happens, or the term of this agreement is until October 31st. What happens to the patio after that date?
That is still to be determined. As of now, the black and white of it is, as Councillor McLean points out, this license will terminate on October 31st. Planning staff, as directed by council, we'll look at what discussions they've had with businesses and what has gone on through this pilot project, and bring a report forward to council on possible phase 2, options for a phase 2. Or alternatively, if Pebbles Restaurant on their own wish to pursue a license agreement that would go past October 31st, or continue to keep their temporary patio on that area through the winter, we would bring a further report forward to council seeking an amendment to the term, for example, of the license. We would look at a further agreement, but right now what we're asking you to consider tonight is strictly a license that will go till October 31st.
Councillor Kuster?
Yeah, I'm happy to move recommendation number 2, that the appropriate license to occupy agreement to be entered into 5454 Trail Nominee Ltd, DBA Pebbles Restaurant, to authorize the placement of a temporary patio structure on the portion of the right-of-way along the Trail Bay Boulevard public walkway as detailed in the license agreement. Further, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to sign the agreement.
Is there a seconder? Seconded, okay. I have a question. When I saw this in the application or in the agenda here, I drove by there and they're not open. So I was questioning why they're putting a patio in if they're not open to be able to use it, and only for 6 weeks. So yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship. As I mentioned a minute ago, council meets every 2 weeks. We didn't want to do anything that would hinder the owners to be able to open, Discussions have been ongoing for probably the last month, I would say. And you're exactly right, the restaurant is not open yet. But at least we've done our piece. If the owners aren't able to move forward with the patio within the terms of this license to occupy, we will still have gathered a lot of really good information for our pilot program, for comments for staff to bring back to you. So it was a really good exercise to still deal with this owner, because I think as council is aware, we've had one other interested party, and that was the SDBA. So it's helpful, to deal with other owners and see what the needs are. But as I say, we didn't want to be holding anything up at our end. I mean, conceivably, they could open the restaurant in the next few days, and, it's all up to them. They could put tables and chairs out there and what have you. Thank you.
Thank you. And given this is September and our meeting schedule is altered, which I was reminded of today, because of UBCM, this is the only council meeting until October.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor McLean, Councillor Toth.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of supporting this at the time. I absolutely love the concept of getting a patio onto the walkway in Trail Bay. I think it could be a very wonderful project. However, I have two major concerns that I don't see being addressed right now. One, this patio is too skinny. There is hardly enough space for a waitress or a waiter to walk behind the chairs and serve these tables. Never mind patrons walking behind each other. So even in non-COVID times, it's not enough space. So I think there needs to be further development on the space issue. But my bigger concern is that it's really unrealistic that this patio is going to be used this year. The restaurant needs to be open, and we need to have good weather. Those are closing really quickly. And given that we have a ending period of this contract in front of us of October 31st, I don't believe that everything will come together in that time. If it does come together, we need to make a very quick decision on what we do with it long term. I would rather make a proper permanent decision for next summer. So I would encourage the applicant to come back to us January, February, whenever, and come up with a plan to build this patio for next summer. So as it stands right now, with the end date of October 31st, I'm not going to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I echo many of Councillor McLean's concerns, and that's not just because of the audio issues we're having tonight. However, I don't want to be the cause of this getting held up. If the business owner thinks that they can make this work and that they're willing to make it work for the cost, even if it is only a month to a month and a half, that's not really our prerogative or our decision to get in on. I'm in favor of this. I think a patio along there would be quite lovely, and I look forward to enjoying it next summer, assuming we approve it again for next summer. But in the meantime, I'm happy to vote in favor of this for now. If the applicant decides that it's not going to be economical for them for a month, that's going to be their decision. It won't have been something that we'll have imposed or blockaded.
I have some of the same concerns that Councillor McLean has indicated. And if I step back and look at it, I understand they could go forward and do a permanent patio application. That requires liaising and applying to the Liquor Control Board because of change of space and everything else. Given the situation we're dealing with COVID right now and the relaxation that the province has put in, I think this has given those who choose an opportunity to put something temporary in to try it out, to see if it is something that they want to do permanently, which they then could apply and go through the process and pay the fees and all those kinds of things that all have been waived this year, to then go to something permanent. So I'm in favor of them letting them try it. If at the end of October they say it's not working, it comes down. There's minimum cost because they're paying for the patio, but they're not doing all of the licensing changes and the fees and everything else that have to happen. So I think it's an opportunity for them to try that. So I will support it tonight. Councillor McLean?
Yeah, if we look at the design proposed for this patio, nothing suggests that it is temporary. Yes, it can be removed, but they are going through significant expense to create a very high quality patio with wood decks, a barbecue station. This thing is going to be nice. Everything appears that it's going to be permanent. So I would like to make it, before I give away parkland, because that's what this is. This is a park. We're allowing a business to operate in a park. I think can have a lot of benefits, but I want to make that decision with everything on the table. And right now, approving a temporary permit that is going to, everything indicates that it's going to become permanent. We don't have everything on the table.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that it's not up to us to decide how much the applicant spends on, on their infrastructure they put in. And it is temporary, so, if they want to spend $50 and put a patio in, that's awesome. If they want to spend $50,000 and put a patio in, that's awesome also. And any business owner is, all they can do is do the best they can do to entice people to come to their, their place of business. So I support this, and it is temporary. So here we go. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor Rowe.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's up to the business owner to take the risk. I don't want to, although I concur with some of what Councillor McLean is saying, but we're here to consider this temporary application. So I will make a motion and move recommendation number 2, that the appropriate license to occupy agreement be entered into with 5454 Trail Nominee Limited DBA Pebbles Restaurant to authorize the placement of a temporary patio structure on a portion of a right-of-way along the Trail Bay Boulevard Park public walkway as delineated in the license agreement. Further, that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to sign the agreement.
I think that's already been seconded.
I
All those in favor?
Oh.
That's okay. I know it's probably been
As
a
I
long
was
day.
reading it, I was thinking this sounds really familiar.
Yeah. Any opposed? Would you like that recorded? Yes, please. All right, move on to next item. Item 10.4. This was the late item. Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation, Trail Bay Oceanfront Boulevard Improvement Project. And the reason this came to us as a late item is this is a grant program that has very recently opened up, and it has a short turnaround time. So kudos to Mr. Bandera for putting this together and getting it to us to apply. So motion to receive the report. Moved, seconded, all in favor? Thank you. And over to you, Sanat.
Sanat go to slideshow.
Up at the top, slideshow.
Beside animations on the top row, slideshow.
Yeah, right there, perfect. And from beginning. Awesome. Sounds good. Looks good.
However, we can't hear you.
Sanat, we can see your presentation, but we can't hear you.
Hello,
Hello, we can hear you. Perfect.
can you hear me? Okay, good. So before we start, I would like to make quick clarification. The agenda item shows that Investing Canada Infrastructure COVID-19 Community Resilience Grant, but the report is for Investing Canada Infrastructure Program Community Culture and Recreation. I think the name of the agenda of the grant is some discrepancy.
So which is it? Is it the, it's
This
the
is
community culture and recreation?
Yes, that is the correct
Okay.
one.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about this. The technical issues. I have a brief presentation for you tonight about Trail Bay Oceanfront Boulevard Improvement Project and the potential grant opportunity. The purpose of this presentation is to seek council approval to apply the Investing Canada Infrastructure Program Community Culture and Recreation Grant for the District of Seychelles Trail Bay Oceanfront Boulevard Improvement Project. The cost sharing for this grant opportunity will be covered through ICIP CCR grant, Parks DCC, and the Municipal Assist Factor. The ICIP CCR grant will provide the majority of the cost, that is 73.33 of the eligible cost. The Park DCC will cover 25.67% of the cost, and the municipal portion of 1% will be covered through general revenue, and therefore there will be no additional tax burden to the public. The deadline for the grant application is October 1st, 2020, and mandated project completion date is March 31st, 2026. The staff would like to present the following recommendations. That the report from the Manager of Engineering Services regarding Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation, Trail Bay Oceanfront Boulevard Improvement Project is be received. The council directs staff to apply for the grant opportunity to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation for the Trail Bay Oceanfront Boulevard Improvement Project. That the council directs staff to apply to this grant for works which include a full road closure for vehicle traffic using Parks Development cost charges to cover its 25.67% portion, that is 154,158 of the cost for this project. Its 1% municipal assist amount, $6,005 from general revenue, with the other 73.33, that is 440,375 coming from Canada Infrastructure Program, Community, Culture and Recreation, for the total project cost $600,538. Options. The council directs staff to apply to this grant for works which include narrow one-way westbound vehicle lane using Parks Development cost charges, DCC, to cover its 25.67 portion, that is 119,473 of the cost for this project. Its 1% municipal assist amount, 4,654 from general revenue, with the other 73.33, that is 341,292 coming from the Canada Infrastructure Program, Community, Culture and Recreation, for the total project amount of $465 and $419. Direct staff not to apply for investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community, Culture and Recreation, or any other application applicable infrastructure grant at this time. I would like to give a bit of a background about the Trail Bay Oceanfront Boulevard project. This project has been in the works for over 20 years. Trail Bay Boulevard has high pedestrian traffic and is a popular attraction to both visitors and locals alike. The total distance of this boulevard pathway is 850 meters, extending from Friendship Park to Shorncliffe Avenue. The missing link of the boulevard pathway extends between Trail Avenue and Ocean Avenue. This is about 210 meters. This section is currently shared with pedestrian, cyclist, and vehicular traffic, creating an unsafe situation. The rest of the boulevard pathway is dedicated only for cyclists and pedestrians. Due to this unsafe situation, the public has made numerous requests to provide safer biking and walking facility for this section. As a result, district staff prepared concept designs to accommodate these requests. These concept designs were presented to the public during the Have You Say Seychelles event in early December 2018. Both designs were well received, but option 1 was preferred according to public survey. In addition, the boulevard was closed for traffic in March 2019 during Active Transportation Month. Following this road closure, the district received much positive feedback from the public. I will provide more details regarding public input in the later slides. The Seychelles Downtown Business Association also provided a letter of support for this Trail Bay waterfront improvement. The district staff has prepared 2 in-house concept designs with the following features. Option 1 includes complete closure of the Trail Bay Boulevard to vehicular traffic, paving of the windward lane between Trail Avenue and Ocean Avenue, maximizing landscape and park development areas to enhance the overall aesthetic of the linear park. Construct 3.5 meter wide multi-use pathway similar to the current Trail Avenue design. Dark sky friendly bollard lighting similar to watermark frontage bollard lights, benches and picnic tables, as well as service vendor pads and parking on each side of the boulevard. Option 2 includes a one-way 2.8 meter wide narrowed westbound vehicle lane, which will maintain front access to all residences. This lane will be separated by a barrier curb to ensure the safety of the pedestrians and the park users. Less landscape, park development areas, and park benches and furniture compared to option 1. Construct 3.5 meter multi-use pathway similar to Trail Avenue. Dark sky friendly bollard lighting, benches and picnic tables and service vendors pad provided. This option also includes angle parking on either side of the boulevard. So you can see that this is a concept option 1 design drawing for option 1. As described in the previous slide, this design has more park area and benches and furniture. You can see that more greenish area, more green area over here, this gray areas over there, these are the benches, this all concept, but once the landscape architects come, maybe little changes on these ones. And the multi-use pathway, you can see that the darker gray line is a bike lane that will connect on the east side of Trail Avenue and also connect on the west side of Ocean Avenue on this side. Can you see my cursor moving?
I can't see it.
On the west side? On the east side now?
No.
No. Okay. I think there's some technical issue. Can you see this slide?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you can see that option 1, the windward lane is darker color. That means it's paving on that as part of the option 1. And also we have completed Ocean Avenue and Trail Avenue in 2012 and 2014. And then we provided the sidewalk and parking along that sections. You can see that either side we are going to provide angle parking with a couple of accessible friendly parking spots for the seniors and accessibility requirement people. So if we go to the next slide is option 2, and we can see that less green area, and you can see the narrowed the vehicle access along the boulevard. This arrow pointing east to west, that's from Trail Avenue towards Ocean Avenue. It's a 2.8 meter wide, and a barrier curb for protection and angle parking, and similar to that the other one. So additional accessible friendly parking stall can be provided as needed. That's as per demand, so we can create it in the few accessible friendly one, but we can see over here both sides we have 5 parking and 1 vendor. Out of 5 parking each side, we can provide a couple of accessible friendly parking stalls. This slide shows the public consultation results. Have you say Seychelles event? Sorry, this is comparison of the options. You can see option 1 and option 2 estimated cost. Option 1 600,538. Option 2 465,419. Vehicle access, primary access from Windward Lane. Windward Lane had to be paved for option 1. Option 2 access available from both Boulevard and Windward Lane. The park area for option 1 maximize park area and provides more benches. Trade and the option 2 trade park area for driving lane. The continuous waterfront pathway for both options. The public support most popular with public outreach. And option 2, less popular with most of the public, more popular with some homeowners along Boulevard and elderly people. Safety, option 1, maximize pedestrian safety by road closure for vehicles. Option 2, poses risk due to a combined park and vehicle area. The Boulevard residents, for some residents, Boulevard access is preferred. However, these residents will have access via Windward Lane 2. Option 2, maintain existing one-way access road along Boulevard, and also Windward Lane will remain as it is. This slide shows the public consultation results from the Have You Say Seychelles event, which took place in 2018 December. The district received 33 completed surveys. From those 33, the sample size is 33. 67%, that is the green area. The people preferred option 1, that is a road closure, and 41% of the people choose option 2. The option 1 was 26% more favorable than option 2. This slide shows the statistical information from the active transportation month, that the road closure along the Boulevard in 2019. The laneway parking was closed for 1 month in March 2019. The district received 21 responses from people via emails and letters. For those results, 57% liked the road close, that's a green area, and 43% disliked the road closer, that's a blue area. So the concerns from the people who disliked the road closure was decreased parking and mobility access issues. However, both option 1 and 2 will provide additional parking on both ends of the boulevard, which will address these concerns. Financial implication, preferred option 1. Option 1 includes the following. The boulevard improvement project is in the 5-year capital plan, as well as the DCC park, park DCC list. Available funds in the park DCC is around 724,766. The projected cost is 600,538. Funds can be allocated from park DCC 25.67, that is 154,158. 1% municipal assist factor, that's coming from general revenue, 6,005, and there's no additional tax burden to the residents. And this is financial implication for option 2. The total project cost is 465,419. Funds can be allocated from DCC, that is 25.67%, 119, 473, 1% municipal assist factor. From general revenue is 4,654. And we have available fund and no additional tax burden to residents. The cost difference between option 1 and option 2 is mostly for Windward Lane improvement with estimated cost of $135,000. Communication strategy. The communication strategy for this project will include the following. If grant is awarded, the public will be notified by news release and district website. Additional public consultation will be held to present the 75% design. A separate meeting for impacted property owners along the boulevard will be held in 2021. The public consultation are not expected to delay the project completion date of March 31st, 2026. this concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Councillors, any questions? And you can stop sharing your screen. Perfect. Thank you, Sanat. I'll have one question before we see some hands go up here. As you indicated, the design right now is 75%.
No, this is a concept design.
Okay.
Once the grant approved, we will do a 75% design to bring it to the public consultation.
Okay, so that was my concern. Like, can we make some changes given these are the designs we're going forward with? So that's good. What about irrigation?
That's a good question. I think I forgot to explain that. So, the part of our projects, the frontage of the waterfront, watermark, we put some irrigation pipes.
Right.
That's a dry lines now. It's hooked up to the future reclaimed water that's on Inlet Avenue. So we are going to plan to extend that dry line for reclaimed water towards Ocean Avenue for this section. And once the reclaimed water in commission, so we can directly hook up to that one.
Okay, thank you.
And
Any
in
questions?
addition,
Sorry, go ahead.
We did Ocean Avenue project.
Yes.
We extend the drinking water line, and we propose to provide the water for drinking water facility for this once the project start. This is a fountain.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Scott.
On your option 1 there, the areas on each end that are listed for parking, you didn't draw any lines on there as how you thought that people would be able to make the turn in there. And is there really enough room that somebody could go in one way and go back out the other way without, it just seems too tight?
Actually, we forgot to put these lines. These lines are not angle, and this is lines up, rectangle to this one. And yes, they have enough room to backing up to Hammerhead and go back on the other way. So the people come from Trail Avenue should park a right angle and backing up and then turn the other way.
But there won't be enough room for cars to pass each other.
Yeah. That's what you can see that drawing. The multi-use pathway, we shifted all the way towards the whatever retaining wall.
So I think I understand your question, Councillor Scott. I think what Sanat has indicated is this is a concept design at this point. So all of those sorts of things will have to be addressed inside of the actual design if we get approved for the funding.
Yes.
My concern with it is if it's proven that we can't feasibly make that turnaround, I would want option 2.
Okay.
So it changes the grant.
Okay, so then that question then is, if we apply for option 1 and get granted that, can we reduce the amount of money that we take if we choose later to go with option 2?
Yes, we should ask from the ministry. We can increase, we can decrease, because if we increase, they will not provide additional money, but they love it if we decrease the scope of work.
So that addresses your concern, Councillor Scott. Any other questions? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, so when we did the pilot project back in March 2019, I spent a good number of days sitting out there and talking to people and collecting their feedback. And despite the survey results that we did at the open house and through emails, I found a definite preference for a design like option 2. I think option 2 flows a lot better, and it allows people to access both parking areas. It allows them to continue to drive on that road. So I would be in support of option 2 for the design. And there's the added benefit that it does have a lower cost. And despite that, a grant is the majority funder. It's still taxpayer money. It's just not the District of Sechelt.
Councillor Toth?
Yep, thank you very much. I wanted to take a couple minutes to thank staff for going through the time to put all this together and going through the community consultation. I am going to soapbox a little bit here, and I'm not going to apologize for it this time. I'm opposed to the closing of the boulevard to both through traffic and parallel parking. Community is hardly unanimous on this idea. And for the loss of the easy access to our waterfront, I'm not supportive of doing much more than patching the potholes and fixing the stairs to the beach at this time. We're all a pretty physically capable bunch, but what about those who aren't, or those who have respiratory issues? My mother used to pick up lunch, drive out to park on the boulevard to eat. She'd sit in her car out there and draw, talk to people walking by. I know that she's not alone on that. I've spoken to more than just the usual suspects about this through my shop, and the people that do want to see it stay open largely enjoy the organic nature of that roadway. If we're going to talk about pedestrian or cycling safety out there, I'd like to see a report for accident statistics for that section of road for the last 10 years. As an alternative to the proposal, I don't mind seeing the travel lane narrowed for driving and parallel parking moved closer to the houses in order to facilitate some sort of multi-use pathway. But I really don't think stall parking is the way to go. Particularly in times of COVID, the current configuration still allows vulnerable population to safely physically distance while enjoying the waterfront, regardless of their mobility challenges. As has been pointed out by people to me, we are an aging community. Some of us are not necessarily representative of that, but we are an aging community here in Sechelt. I'm also concerned about our ability to complete projects. We have a currently incomplete dog park. We have Trail Avenue on the go with the issues that have come up during that. We're about to start Wharf Avenue, curb and gutter and sidewalk. We're looking at bike lanes up to Kinnickinnick Park. And we're also about to embark on a new operations center, finally after 8 years without one. We're also trying to sort out how to hold Wakefield Lift Station together long enough to make it through yet another winter. I don't think we have the time or staff capacity to manage yet another nice to have here in our community. And we talked at strategic plan review about whether or not we should be chasing grants for the sake of chasing grants. And this is one that I think we can do without for the time being. If we do decide we need to move forward with this at some point in the future, there will be other grant opportunities. It's not like this is the only time the government's going to hand out money. If as a council, we're determined to spend $500,000 on a park, I'd actually like to suggest that we prioritize the East Porpoise Bay Esplanade Trail from Allen Road to Burnett. That has an option to actually increase our community's access to the water rather than to restrict it for some people in our community. It's currently included in 2022 in our capital plan, but I'd be in favor of moving it forward. In the meantime, I'd like to move staff option 2, that we direct staff not to apply for Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation, or any other applicable infrastructure grants at this time.
Is there a seconder for that recommendation? There's a seconder. Any comments or questions? Councillor McLean?
Thank you for that, Councillor Toth. You made a lot of really good points. I want to address the one about chasing grants. This is a project that is in our capital plan for next year. This is something that has been envisioned for, I think Sanath mentioned, a decade. This is something
two
that
decades.
a
20
long
years.
time. So this is not something out of the blue. This is our plan, but this is an opportunity to get some funds to build our plan. We're not adapting our plan. We have been talking about this and some iteration of either option 1 or option 2. So I think this is a case of a grant lining up with our plans, and it's a good opportunity. So I did second your motion. So I think it deserves a vote, but I will be voting against it.
Any other comments or questions about the motion on the floor? Councillor Rowe?
Just some comments, I think this is in the plan, so I don't necessarily, I'm not suggesting that it not go forward, but I think part of how I see my role is having a voice for people who aren't part of necessarily being able to be involved in things like have your say in public consultation. And I too, just through the work that I've done and the company I've kept, know that a lot of marginalized, particularly seniors, enjoy that spot the way it is. The community has spoken, and this, as the mayor has just mentioned, a couple of decades on the books. So I would be in favor of voting for option 2, but I guess I just want to reiterate that if this moves forward and we go for funding, the plans as they aren't final, because there are some concerns around even option 2 in my mind. And so am I right with that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Director Douglas, did you want to speak to the motion on the floor, or do we want to vote on this and then speak to whatever comes out of that?
Well, it's a bit of a general comment, but it could reflect in the way people vote.
Okay.
So we had a brief discussion at staff level today, and we didn't really want this report to be about option 1 or option 2, which, you know, it's starting to become. But we could change the motion so we don't have to take an option at this point. We could just take the motion and take out a few words and apply for the greater number. And when we do the application, we'll go about it in redevelopment of, and we can even incorporate both options into the application so that the grantors know that we're looking at this from several points of view and that we still need to do public consultation. But we can secure the greater number by just making a few changes to the motion 3 that's in the report.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Councillor Kuster.
I just have a question for, I guess, Alton. Why, so if we were to look at option 2, are you saying that would not allow people who have mobility issues, who do want to still drive through, not allow them to still do that? But in...
So, Councillor Kuster, I'm going to have you hold that question, because at this point, the motion that's on the floor is that we direct staff not to apply. That's the motion we're talking about. Councillor Toth.
And further to that, to something Councillor McLean said, yes, it's in our plan. We have a lot of things that are in our plan, that have been in our plan for years, decades, that we haven't gotten to, that we may not get to for years or decades. For me, it's more than just the money. 31 people is not a significant sample size in a community of over 10,000. And I just don't feel that we've got the confidence to move forward on something that's going to limit access to our waterfront.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? So the motion on the floor is that we direct staff not to apply for Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Community Culture and Recreation, or any other applicable infrastructure grants. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Okay, Director Douglas.
If council were interested to move forward with option 3 that's in the report, we would just take out that section that says include a full road enclosure for vehicle traffic and just insert something along the lines to apply for this grant for the redevelopment of Trail
Boulevard, yeah.
Or in the amount listed below. Without
okay. Okay. And Sanat, you had a question or comment?
My concern is that the communication strategy, we are going to have a series of public consultation in the future. So that is district-wide, is a little bit broader and not the small sample. So that will give us which options most people preferred. So if we secure the higher amount, then we can go whichever, the option 1 or option 2.
Okay. Councillor Toth.
I'm going to make a motion and I'm going to attempt to lock us in on something resembling option 2, maintaining through traffic. So in the staff report, it does identify and staff report option 1 lists option 2 as a possibility with its funding mechanisms. I would like to move that recommendation and a further recommendation that staff give consideration to increasing the number of handicap stalls at each end.
Is there a seconder to that recommendation? Seconded.
I will.
Okay, it's been seconded.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, any questions or comments? Councillor Kuster.
I guess I'm a bit confused about what you just said, Alden, so I'm not clear on what I'm voting for right now.
The option that I've presented locks in a westward lane of travel.
Okay.
We would maintain through road access on that boulevard. Regardless of what the design ends up looking like, my key is to lock in a lane of travel.
Thank you.
So that is option 1 on page 231. Under options. And that was seconded. Any further comments or questions? Okay, so I'm going to speak against this. I don't know that that's the option that the community wants. I agree with you that our sample size was way too small. 31 people, informing the decision, no. But part of what we're looking at is the flexibility to put the project together in the way that the community wants. By limiting us now, we don't give the community that opportunity to say we want one or the other. We've decided for them without the full community consultation. So I will not be supporting this. I would support Director Douglas's revised recommendation where we don't indicate which option we're looking at, and that with the community consultation actually informs that. And it may be that something like option 2 presented is what we end up building, but we have the flexibility to be able to one or the other. And Councillor Kuster had her hand up. And then we'll go to Director Douglas.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think we should limit our options or cap our money, because we have the opportunity, if we get the full amount, to tweak the design and maybe add the stalls that we need. But if we go in with the 400 and whatever it is, we're definitely limiting it, and I think we have the opportunity to make the boulevard an exceptional place to go for all our community, and I think we need to look at that. So I will be voting against it as well.
Okay, Director Douglas.
Yeah, staff would recommend that we go for the higher dollar value, because even if we go with in the end with option 2 and we modify it, add some more parking spaces, we're going to need an elevated budget from the 465. So, if we just take out the concept issue and just say we're applying for this amount in the $600,000 number, our options are open.
Okay, Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I'm in support of the current motion. I believe the public deserves some clarity at this point. We have been talking about this for so long. I would like to start to make some sort of decision. And the decision that we are making here is that we are keeping the road open and we will be reconfiguring the parking. I think this conversation has gone on far too long. I'm ready to make a decision personally. I've talked to the people I need to talk to, and I'm ready to support the motion as presented.
All right, any further comments or questions? Councillor Toth?
Given that Councillor McLean seems to be willing to support me as presented, would it be beneficial for staff if we amend my motion with the original dollar values so that you're asking for a higher sum of money?
That was going to be my next topic, yes.
Because I will make that amendment to my own motion.
Okay. That allows us for adding more to the whole project if needed.
Okay, and the amendment is seconded. So what we're looking at is locking the project into including a narrow one-way westbound vehicle lane, but with a higher dollar value. That's the amendment that's on the floor. The amendment on the floor is to just increase the dollar value at this point in that recommendation from the 465, 419 to 600, 538. Yes, Sanat.
That's correct.
There's a technical issue. If we because the tool cost because of the windward lane paving and storm issue. If our cost estimate reflect that 600,000 to improve the windward lane. If we are not improving the windward lane, we can go with a lower value.
So what you're saying is if we apply for the 600,000, the documentation that we have to support that application at this point will not match.
Exactly.
And so they'll look at that and say, this doesn't work. Your documentation is inaccurate. All right, Director Douglas, did you have another point at this point? If not, I'll go to Councillor McLean.
Yeah, go on.
Councillor McLean.
So I'm trying to keep this discussion organized, but unfortunately, this calls for me to bring up this topic now. We have an opportunity here to address sea level rise. We have seen a storm, I believe, in about 2012 that significantly impacted Boulevard. So since we are doing work here, we could raise up the seawall by dumping some dirt on the dirt portion and making that path a little bit higher. So I bring that up now because that could make up the difference, and how high we raise it is our flex amount.
All right, any other questions or comments on the amendment? So the amendment is just to change the total project amount from 465, 419 to 600, 538. Councillor Toth.
I just want to make sure that you guys have the maximum dollar amounts available to you in your ask. Maybe the paving budget is doubled and maybe the archaeology costs are 10 times what you've budgeted for, because we know that that's entirely a possibility. So I leave it to staff to figure it out, but I'd like to give you guys the higher amount of money to work with or to ask for.
Okay, so again, I will not be voting for the amendment. I will not be supporting the amendment, given we don't have the documentation to support that, which would cause the whole thing to be declined. So that's it on the amendment at this point. Councillor Kuster.
I was just going to say, so is the amendment also limiting, including the one lane? Are we both? Okay, I will not be voting for that as well. I don't think 33%, the 33 people that voted is a representation. So I think we need to have more information. So I will not be voting for that.
The amendment was on the project cost only.
Yes, project cost only. So we're voting on the project cost at this point only. But it's an amendment to the motion that was on the floor. The motion that was on the floor was to apply for the grant, which would include a narrow one-way westbound vehicle lane. And then the amendment is to just increase the amount on that for this recommendation. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of amending the amount from 465, 419 to 600, 538 in this recommendation? All those opposed? So we got 3-4. All those opposed? Councillor Lamb. If you don't vote, you're voting in favor. Or sorry, you're voting in favor. So that would approve the 600, 538. So which way are you voting?
Well,
you got to choose. You got to choose.
You have to choose, but you know, I could go down there and change the documentation tonight while you guys are worrying about this to make it comply with what we need, the 600,000. It's, yeah, that's the only thing. I mean, we can change the document. Can we change the documentation to, you know, for the road to meet the 600,000? I mean, staff can do that, can't they?
Okay, the
Process
recommend, no,
question, he needs to vote.
no, yeah, you need to vote. There's we need to have you vote either at this point, 465, 419, or 600, 538 in this recommendation as it's on the floor.
I want to see the 600,000.
Okay, so that means that the amendment is approved. So the current motion on the floor is that council direct staff to apply for this grant for works which include a narrow one-way westbound vehicle lane using Parks Development cost charges, etc., those numbers, for a total project amount of 600,538. That's the recommendation on the floor at this point. Any further comments on the recommendation on the floor?
Your
Yes.
Worship, Joanne
Yes.
here. Just to confirm, also added on to the end of that was that the number of accessibility stalls be increased on
Yes.
either end of the
Perfect.
boulevard.
Thank you. And Director Douglas.
as well as the funding sources.
Yes, the funding sources will need to reflect the 600, 538. Right. Okay, yes, Councillor Lamb.
Your staff is going to revisit their estimate and change that and add that. Like they'll make the things balance so that this $600,000 reflects the one-way street.
Sanat?
Yes, so we have revised that our cost estimate to match the funding, 600,538.
With the proposal for a narrow one-way westbound vehicle lane.
And we should include the Windward Lane paving too.
Okay, Councillor McLean.
Again, I'm just going to try and stick to this current motion, but once we're done here, I'm going to make a recommendation that we raise up the PAP to account for climate change mitigation.
Okay, so again, I will not be voting in favor of this personally. I do not want us to limit the community and staff to a decision that has been made pretty much by a very small number of people. I want greater community input so that what we end up building reflects what the community actually wants. So I will not be supporting the recommendation on the floor. Any other comments on the recommendation? Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I think, you know, you're going to put 5 stalls or 10 stalls up there. I think that the district, we have to look a lot further into the future and we're going to have to look at some serious parking, you know, for access to that waterfront because there really isn't enough parking. You know, maybe we're all going to end up on, you know, a different type of vehicle in the near future, so we won't need all these parking stalls, but I'm just, I just struggle with, you know, you've got a beautiful waterfront. It'd be nice to open it up as much as you can to, you know, to put some other venues down there, to put a big venue down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Councillor Toth.
Part of my logic for the one-way street through there, I have concerns about the hammerhead turnarounds. I think that they will end up being a safety problem. And this sort of helps to mitigate that by maintaining travel all in one direction, parking in one direction, carrying things through. We'll see where the vote goes. We'll see where community consultation and feedback comes in, but yeah.
All right, any other questions or comments on the recommendation on the floor? Does everybody know what we're voting on? Yes, okay. All those in favor of the recommendation on the floor? We have 4 in favor. All those opposed? Thank you. So the recommendation that has been passed is that council directs staff to apply for the grant for works which include a narrow one-way westbound vehicle lane using Parks Development cost charges with the numbers revised to reflect a total of 600,538, and that additional handicap spaces or something is what it is, or
Consideration to increasing the number
Right.
of handicap stalls.
perfect. That's the recommendation that's passed. Councillor McLean.
All right, so now I'm going to add in my extra motion. So essentially, I believe that we have a big opportunity here, that we are doing work at our waterfront, and knowing that we can do a project that will better protect our downtown core. Won't provide 100% protection, but at some point we're going to be needing to raise the seawall. So since we're doing work here now, and we need to find some money to get it up to that larger amount, I'm going to propose the following motion. That staff develop a cost estimate for increasing the height of the seawall to mitigate climate change effects and include that amount in the grant application.
And Councillor Toth, are you seconding that?
Just a clarification question on Councillor McLean's motion. What length of seawall are you talking about raising?
The one that we're working on.
210 meters?
It's a start.
Okay, is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded, okay. Back in 2012, I believe Sanat will remember, we actually had an engineering firm come and look at this stretch where the emergency repairs had to be done. And they put together a plan, a design, that could potentially be resurrected. I don't know if the numbers are gonna make any sense right now anymore, because it's been 8 years. But there is some of that work already that's been created. All right, any other questions or comments on the recommendation on the floor? I would have one question on it. Given that we're looking at submitting this for October 1st, that's basically 2 weeks to add the cost in for the climate change mitigation to raise it. Will we be able to add information in about it, but not necessarily have the cost consideration and still be able to move something like that forward? I totally agree with the project. I just don't know about getting the costing done in order to meet the grant application deadline. And that would be 2 staff. Sanat?
I understand that the council consideration for the climate change issues. So the frontage, the boulevard frontage, we are doing only one location. So it doesn't prevent, because other sections open. That's one concern. The other concern, if we elevated this area, maybe, I believe that the 2050, the ocean, the sea level rise by another meter. So at least we have to consider 2050 or beyond that. So that means we have elevated this whole area except the driving lane for another meter, 1.5 meter. So that's the cost is not adequate what we're asking, because the basic works 400,000 something, and we're asking 600,000. The difference is nearly 150, 175. So we need more money to do that. And also that will impact the people ocean view sometimes. We don't know that. So then we need a more wider public consultation if we block in their views. So that's one concern. So I believe we need a lot of what you call these DFO requirements to make a seawall rebuild to raise the height. And we don't know if we raise the height of the seawall, how it's impact the foundation of the existing seawall. So this is so much of geotechnical study and the oceanology study. It will take a time. So I'm just a little bit concerned about this timing and the public consultation. And if we add all stuff to our project list, then it will be disqualify our project.
Thank you. Any comments from council? Councillor Toth.
Yeah, thank you, Sanath. That makes a lot of sense. And certainly with a 2-week turnaround time, making sure we do it right is important. I did second Councillor McLean's motion because if we're not going to do anything about it immediately, we at least need to start having those conversations about sea level rise and climate change adaptation. It may only be the one section of the wall, but if we don't start looking at it at some point, there never is going to be an opportunity to do the entire wall from one end to the other. I'm not in favor of moving forward with the climate change adaptation stuff at this time, but it does need to start being more thought of and more greater consideration given to it. So.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So I'm sorry, I'd like the motion repeated back to me so I know what we're voting on.
Sure. That staff develop a cost estimate for increasing the height of the seawall to mitigate climate change effects and include that amount in the grant application.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion on the floor? All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Councillor McLean, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I agree, it is a conversation that we need to have at the forefront. And I think we've given staff a message that going forward, this is going to be something that needs to be considered even when we have quick turnarounds. So that means there may need to be some work done on, that front before we come up with other grant applications. So thank you for that. Councillor Toth.
I just wanted to ask specifically if staff could ensure that the points of the discussion around climate change adaptation are included in our minutes from this meeting, even though we do have a motion to it, just further record for when we look back at this.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this? Did I see your hand there, Director Douglas? No? Okay. All right, we're finished with this topic. Let's move on to reports from councillors. Councillor reports. So we'll start with Councillor Kuster, Councillor Lamb, Councillor Scott, Councillor McLean, Councillor Rowe, and then Councillor Toth.
I actually don't have much to report. I was gone for a few days and just getting Kayla set up for online university. So I haven't really, I don't have really anything to report this time. So I'll pass it off to someone else.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb.
So anyways, I was at the Scredo meeting this week, and one of the things that came up there was they suggested that possibly getting an independent study that would show the economic benefits of a second ferry and a better road for the Sunshine Coast. Provincial and federal governments do not take into account the economic benefits. That was the discussion that came up anyways, that they look at it, how many riders are on the ferry, but they don't look at the benefits to the community and the I guess the economic value to our community. So anyways, and then Scredo is looking at sending a letter of support to Community Futures for them to move on the potential lease of the Innovation Center at the House of Clans, which is a proposed building on the Sechelt Nation. Also, they're going to send a letter of support to the regional district for the solar system for the Gibson's Rec Center. And also, they're looking at upgrading their website, and so they've hired. It's called Invest Sunshine Coast, and so they've done a real good number on changing the website, and it's going to take each individual community and highlight, just a whole bunch of information with regards to each community. And we had just a preview of the website, and it looks really good. And I think they'll be launching it, in the next, I think before Christmas. And yeah, that's good enough for that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Nothing to report on this round. Hopefully for the next round, though.
Thank you. Councillor Toth.
Sorry, I totally have the wrong page open here. Didn't expect it to come up to me so quickly. Not too much to report. I've been busy, just not with District of Sechelt business. This week, I've attended several ministerial meetings for both the District of Sechelt and the SCRD. And we've got more of those in the remainder of the week. UBCM is, of course, next week. So taking a 3-day event and turning it into a 10-day event, thanks to COVID. Just highly disrupting life and work and all those fun things, but here we are. I did have an opportunity to read the Highway 101 corridor study fairly in depth. And I'd actually, if somebody will second it, I'd like to make a motion to invite a representative of Modi to a future committee of the whole meeting so we can discuss the implications and opportunities in the Sechelt area.
And that's been seconded. I'm just going to comment on that. In the meeting that we had last Friday with our MLA and MP, our MLA was surprised that the PowerPoint presentation that had explained where the data came from and everything else wasn't actually presented to us. So totally in support of that. I think we need to have them come and present at one of our committee of the whole meetings. So there's a motion on the floor. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Toth? Councillor McLean.
Yeah, I just want to echo Councillor Toth's comment about UBCM ministerial meetings. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to have this many meetings this week, so highly disruptive, but highly productive at the same time. To Councillor Lamb, I'm looking forward to a productive meeting with Minister Trevena on increasing ferry service on Friday. So I will definitely report back after that meeting, and I hope we report back on all of our meetings. So that's maybe a discussion between Team Sunshine Coast. Met with the Davis Bay Community Association last week and kind of continued the discussion that we had at Committee of the Whole regarding dumping in Davis Bay and how the bins were overflowing. Didn't come up with any solutions there, but they were in support of developing some kind of better dumping system so weekend residents have a place to put their garbage. So I want to keep that conversation moving.
Councillor Rowe.
Nothing for me this time.
Thank you. So what have I got? Councillor Toth, did you mention the strategic planning at the SCRD in your report? Sorry, I've read it, but it's been a couple of days. Okay, I won't talk about that. I actually attended an 85th birthday party via Zoom. And while they didn't know how it was going to go, it actually created an opportunity where relatives and friends from around the world got to attend and wish this fellow happy birthday. I think he said he had something like 60 different people from a number of different countries. He was thrilled. And I loved seeing him with his crown and everything else. It was a lot of fun to take part in that. meetings. So as Councillor Toth and Councillor McLean indicated, because of the change in format with UBCM, I believe it's something like 16 or 18 meetings that we have this week with ministers from the province. And we are approaching it as Team Sunshine Coast. So just for all of you that are listening, Team Sunshine Coast. So when we actually got the confirmation of meetings last week, which I think finished about Thursday, they gave us the final dates. Friday afternoon, we got together via Zoom. Not everybody could be there, but it was, we basically determined who was going to take the lead on each of the meetings, which means we don't all have to prepare for 18. I only had 3, which was good because it takes a lot of time to put that information together. We have a 15 to 20 minute block. We need to make our pitch about the issue we're dealing with and come up with what we're asking them for, and then who we'd follow up with. Some of the comments, our CAO actually commented, he was only on with 2 of us because he's on vacation this week, but his comment was that he's really enjoying working with the governments on the Sunshine Coast. As we know, he's been in this role for 20 years in various municipalities, and he said we're doing a really good job of being clear and direct and putting our asks in for the ministers. So yes, I agree we should do some reporting back on what we've been doing. That'll probably be into October when we do that, given we've got the conference next week, but great. And kudos to all of the other elected officials on the Sunshine Coast for rearranging schedules to make these meetings, because we don't have any opportunity to change them up. It's just, we basically have to change our lives around to meet these. Tomorrow morning, for example, there's a 9:10 to a 9:40 meeting, which means the SCRD infrastructure meeting is not going to be starting till 9:45. And then Councillor McLean will be taking one of the District of Sechelt meetings representing us. In the afternoon, we're going to be taking a recess during the Corporate Administrative Services Committee meeting to be able to attend one of the other minister meetings. So it's a lot of juggling, but we're making it work. So thank you to all of you and all the work you're putting in. And thank you to the other elected officials up and down the coast. Councillor Toth, SCRD report.
Thank you. I was about 20 minutes late getting it to corporate services, so it didn't make it into the agenda as a scheduled item. It had to come late. So my apologies to anybody who went looking for it and didn't find it. It's all there. The one thing I did want to sort of tag on is that I'm making myself available to speak to the SCRD motion on ICI packaging and paper products recycling regulations. The motion is supposed to be considered as part of a block, so hopefully I won't have to speak to it unless somebody wants to pull it specifically. But the very first minister meeting we had was on ICI recycling and extended EPR regulations, and I took the lead on that one as well. And got a couple comments from other directors afterwards, because I'd prepared a very specific script, and because we're doing this all by telephone, I don't have to worry about people looking where I'm looking. And I was able to just stick with my script. And a couple of the comments from directors were that it sort of set the bar really high for them, and they scrambled to make their own scripts for their meetings. So happy to take any questions on my SCRD report.
Any questions for Councillor Toth? No questions. Let's move on to correspondence. First, a motion to receive the correspondence. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Then, any questions? Who wants to go first? You both put your hands up at the same time. Councillor McLean. And don't point to each other. That doesn't work.
I'm going to put the letter from the Sechelt Chamber up on short-term rentals.
Okay. Would you like to discuss that? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to reach out and confirm what our strategy for just addressing short-term rentals are. Maybe the Director of Planning could speak to that.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you. Respecting short-term rentals, there really are two bylaws that will apply. There's the zoning bylaw, which is zoning bylaw 580, which has been referred to in some correspondence. And then there's either a business license bylaw or perhaps even a separate yet to be developed short-term rental bylaw. So the zoning bylaw would outline the land use aspects of it. Perhaps we could identify zones where short-term rental is appropriate. Perhaps we could identify size of parcel or maximum number of bedrooms, or even identify 2 tiers, minor and major short-term rental. And so that part of it, and we're not there yet. We don't have those types of specifics in place. The second part would then be the requirements around licensing, getting a business license, having an on-site operator, and noise and other things, like the pieces that are the pieces that we are able to enforce a little bit more directly on short-term rental. We want to in the future. So again, there's the two ways of looking at that. Bylaw 580 does include short-term rentals, but it's not a short-term rental project as discussed at previous council meetings. And so we are looking at options and have yet to set a firm direction, and we'll be including that as part of our impending engagement that we're working on at the moment.
So following up on Councillor McLean's comment, I mean, we did bring it up at the Advisory Planning Commission, and I talked to the communications manager, and she said part of the engagement that we're going to have around 580 will address some of those points, but only to inform the zoning pieces in 580, not
Right.
how short-term rentals will actually be licensed, or whether we'll have an on-site or off-site operator or any of those kinds of things. That won't be part of 580. That would be the work that would happen down the road.
Yeah, it'd be supplemental work once we establish parameters of where short-term rentals can be located in the land use aspects of it.
Okay, Councillor McLean, any other questions on that?
I think I saw Councillor Toth, but.
Well, I'm just, is there any
Okay,
follow-up? Is there any follow-up you have on that before I go to him?
No, just further discussion. I think the community right now is looking for clarity on short-term rentals. We are hearing it from both sides, those in favor and those opposed to short-term rentals. We're receiving a good number of emails on both. I'm being approached by people. And I think a lot of that is led by Gibsons and the SCRD at an advanced stage in their bylaw development right now. So from the onset, I think our goal was to have a unified, or at least something that resembled what they're doing in SCRD and in Gibsons in Sechelt. So I guess my question is, when will we be able to provide that clarity? Because people don't have it now. They don't know what their investment is going to look like in the next year. Are we going to be able to get something going for next summer?
Director Allen?
That's a tough question to answer, to be honest. There's a number of factors, timing of the overall zoning bylaw, where council wants staff to priority in that regard. The one thing I've noticed from the other two bylaws, SCRD has some limitations on number of guests and so forth, but that may be different from Gibson's. But I think it's that presence of an on-site operator or of a management company that can be contacted. So I think that's one of the key points, and that can be a zoning bylaw piece as well, right? So I think that's one area where we can find common ground with the other jurisdictions. However, I don't have a specific timeline at this point.
Okay, Councillor Toth.
I've got two questions also regarding this letter, and then I've got some stuff about correspondence item 1, but we'll stick with the short-term rentals. Question for our Director of Planning. We do issue business licenses to short-term rentals. They're required to get a business license in the district of Sechelt. How many do we have issued?
We have over 70, I think it's 73 business licenses for short-term rentals.
Okay, and then sort of my follow-up to that, because I did warn you in advance that I was going to be asking these questions. Given that that is less than a quick search of Airbnb turns up, do we have any capability to work on getting the rest of the short-term rentals in Seashell under business licensing so that we can at least know who they are, where they are, and can look at regulations as a whole package rather than just trying to address 2/3 of the regulated businesses?
I understand in the past, some there was a bit of a project of looking online for available rentals, comparing to our businesses, even mapping them out, identifying where they're located, which enabled us to then track owners and seek there's quite a procedure in terms of tracking down or when we receive a complaint. It appears as though it's quite labor intensive, and once people who do not have business licenses are contacted and we go through our various procedures, we have in the past experienced about a 50% compliance rate. So then how much time, effort, focus is spent on those who are not willing to comply with the basic parameters of getting licenses and so forth. So there's quite a fair amount of legwork to do to chase that and actively pursue that.
Okay, I'm going to follow up on that one. I know that one of the conversations that I've had with our CAO and our Director of Finance was to potentially include the cost of the software that's now available that will actually mine all of the short-term rental sites and identify for us where they are with addresses. So, and then I've been in conversation with Sunshine Coast Tourism, and they're also potentially looking at that software. Given we are a funder of them, they may be able to, if they go forward with that, they may be able to provide that kind of data to us as well, which would get rid of a lot of that legwork that would have to be done and could be updated regularly. That would then allow for easier enforcement. But I think that's part of the bigger conversation that you've alluded to around what does it look like? I agree. If we need to have an even playing field in the community, which means more bylaw, and we need to figure out how to make that happen. So there's a much bigger conversation. Councillor McLean.
Yeah, but I think that's a starting point. I think one thing that I hear from everyone that writes into us is that they want to see better enforcement. So one way to start with that is identifying the people who are operating without a business license. We can get them in, attempt to get them into our system. We can share our noise bylaws, share our Airbnb bylaws, share the provincial health orders, and at least try and get that information out. So we may not have weekend bylaw enforcement. We may not have a perfect short-term rental bylaw, but if we do get that software, we could start identifying these people, get the communications out, and that may start us on a path of fewer short-term rentals with noise complaints and the other issues that we see.
No, I agree. And I mean, we'll be watching for that budget item to come forward in our deliberations. Councillor Toth.
Is it worth putting forward a motion to write a letter to Sunshine Coast Tourism asking for collaboration on looking at that software suite?
Yes.
Then I will move that motion.
And seconded by Councillor McLean. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Thank you. I love collaboration. Awesome. What is there anything particular? This letter from the chamber doesn't it? I mean, they did get an acknowledgement and a response. I would suggest this be added to the file that we've started on short-term rentals at this point to ensure that it's part of the correspondence package that we've been collecting. And I don't know if we need a motion for that. I think it can just go in there. Okay, perfect. Anything else on any of the other two? Councillor Toth.
Sorry, I'm out of water. I'm tired. It's late. But looking at correspondence item 1, it was sort of copied to us as a, just so you know, but I did want to take a minute to just sort of speak to it. It's mentioned in the letter that no substantive progress has been made. From our last council agenda, on page 20, note 11 in the draft water conservation strategy, I'm going to read this absolutely verbatim. Leak detection and repair is an ongoing part of the SCRD operations and maintenance activities and budget. The SCRD currently conducts leak detection activities using an acoustic sounding technology called geophones. A newer technology, the noise correlator, has been demonstrated to the SCRD twice. It didn't work in the first demo, and it may work in the second. The technology acts like a large microphone and picks up the sound of leaks. Given that much of the distribution system is along the highway, it can be difficult to use the technology to identify leaks with the highway noise. The SCRD is investigating if and how this technology should or could be used. It shows promise for investigating known leaks, less potential for identifying leaks, and staff will continue to investigate. I just wanted to highlight that paragraph because that's something that came across our agenda, but it's not something we've talked about over at the SCRD table. And so I know that the chamber is primarily watching the SCRD table for water updates, but I did notice that last meeting, and I wanted to highlight that specifically for them.
Councillor Toth, could you actually forward that information to them?
Sure, I will respond to the chamber letter.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments about any of the correspondence? Any emergency items from staff? All right, motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded, all in favor. Thank you.